Sterling. Did he get you one?
Johnson almost picked up.
Yo, what's up, guys? My name is Hayes alongside Harrison Simeon, and we are back for episode 6 of the Scobo SportsCast, season 2. I feel like we always mention that in a different, arrangement every episode, but episode 6, season 2, nonetheless. And yeah, no guest this week, but we're just gonna be talking some ball, a little bit of inverse, from the Baylor game, because I was at a wedding and Harrison was at the game. So I guess real quick, or I don't know, how do we want to do this? Do you want to talk about your experience first, or should we talk about my kind of, vague experience of kind of catching the game?
I'll talk about mine. We could talk about yours because then it'll just segue into us discussing the game from my
Okay,
perspective.
sweet. That's what I was kind of thinking, because I don't know, I was like the wedding was super fun, so that was good. But obviously, you guys don't care about the wedding, care about the game. And for me, I don't know, I was able to watch the first half live. I watched highlights, but I don't know, highlights obviously don't tell the whole story, from the first half. So I watched the second half and probably like the rest of y'all almost fell asleep with just how many injuries and replay reviews, especially that one driver, Kansas State got injured on 4 straight plays. It was I don't know, you obviously feel bad, you don't want to, it's an injured player, but at a certain point, you're also my God, what is happening in this game? Really,
Right.
Colorado is really taking on the Big 12 after dark, really setting that in stone. And and yeah, I don't know, it was an exciting game. I mean, I never really get to, I never cheer because I'm usually at the game being a journalist, but I was loud as hell on that Colton Hood pick. I was screaming my head off. And from what I heard, you'll talk about this. It was one of the loudest people had heard Folsom, ever. So I don't know. It was a real exciting game, even though the Buffs lost, of course, the end, the PI. I thought, it was kind of interesting. I was, all my, two of the three friends I was with, they go here and they were they thought the ball was just thrown so far out of bounds, not even close, close for a PI. And I agree that it wasn't a good throw, but I don't know. I thought it was within the realm and PI could have been called. And I don't know. I forget who was calling the game, but whoever was both announcers were like, "Oh, that ball's way out of bounds. It shouldn't be PI." So I think that may have been a little bit of it, but I don't know. It was interesting being a fan once again, I guess, is the biggest thing that I took away. But yeah, no, I'm sure everyone would love to hear, from the man who was actually there and, covered the game and everything.
Well, yeah, just a note on the commentary you brought up. It was Mark Jones who called
It was.
NDSU and he called Stanford last year. So he's had some eventful games to call for us, especially in the late time slot, I guess.
Yeah. And the
Like they,
negative light too, nonetheless. It's tough. We
yeah,
need
well, NDSU was a win.
or which one was it?
NDSU. There's
Oh,
five
NDSU. Okay, yeah, he did call
first time
NDSU.
series.
Never mind. Anyways.
Um, but no, my game, I called from the radio booth. I got to do play-by-play for the second and third quarters. Me with Trent, Matt, and Nick, all up in the booth, and it was a whole lot of fun. Being able to, I guess I called the less eventful 2 quarters of the game, but it was more frustrating for Colorado. So just because of, the run game was the story. DJ Giddens absolutely torched us through the first 3 quarters of that game. And, you saw the Buffs, still put together a couple good offensive drives, able to get us back into that, get the Buffs back into it. And, at the end, you just got to tip your cap at a certain point. And I don't know if they played good enough to win. It was probably the first real Big 12 atmosphere I'd been in. It was the first Big 12 game because I didn't go to Baylor. But I think it's still, rings a little bit more positive than negative in terms of how the Buffs can compete in the Big 12. I saw a lot of things that you can take away where it's like, oh, that needs to, fix itself. And we'll probably get into that. We'll go issue by issue or maybe player by player at this point. Um, but there were still a lot of things that, you know, where the Buffs they would put together just a really strong offensive drive where the RPOs would be clicking, the quick game would be a huge positive. And even though there wasn't a run game, being able to put up what we did on that defense still shows a lot about the talent we have and the depth we have, especially as we'll go into because of Travis Hunter's absence and Jimmy Horn's absence and eventually a Marion Miller's absence. So, and on that Colton Hood pick, to your point, it was extremely loud in that stadium, extremely loud. And I was kind of in shock. I got like there's moments where you get the hairs that stand up on your neck in a stadium where the crowd just swells and it's such a crazy moment. And if he returned that for a touchdown, I don't even know how loud that stadium could have gotten. But it was still such an amazing moment, and then they scored a couple plays later anyway, and took the lead, which was, it shows a lot about sometimes with this team, they just don't like to go down without a fight. They don't like to die. And that's what showed. Even though they weren't able to come out on top in the last drive, you can, you know, put a lot of questions out about the play call decision on fourth down. Obviously, there was a penalty that set us back in that spot, but set the bus back in that spot. But still a lot of positive takeaways.
Yeah, no, I mean, the biggest thing for me, especially because this is like, I don't know, especially, for anybody who's been listening to us for the past, you know, not 2 years quite yet, but I guess, last year and now beginning this year, I've been a huge, uh, I'm not sure what word to say, but I've been a huge advocate for the fact that Travis Hunter is the most influential, like non-quarterback in the game of college football. And I think that like, without his presence on the field, I don't think the Buffs win the games, win some of the games that they did last year. I mean, which is just crazy to think about given that they only won four. And already this year, you look at NDSU, you look at Baylor, and those are, two games where I thought if you don't have Travis Hunter at all, you don't win those games. And so it was very promising for me to see after his injury, which hopefully for the Buffs isn't too big of a deal because like I said, I still think he has the impact. But after his injury, it didn't look like the Buffs it didn't look like they didn't have anyone to go to, I guess. Where I felt like at times last year, there were times where they were when Travis was out, they were looking for someone, and eventually, and I don't know, someone would pop up. I guess can't think of the big dude, the tight end.
Antonio,
Yeah, I think so. But
was that at Arizona State?
yeah,
Yeah, it was Javon Antonio.
yeah. He stepped up, and I don't know, different guys kind of stepped up, but it was still kind of like, I don't know, just kind of weird plays here and there and not an actual reliance that I feel like LeJohntay Wester, and even though, people have said the things that they've said about Will Shepherd, but I feel like he's been fairly reliable, and it just sucks that Amarion Miller ended up having the injury that he had later in the game because he's only a sophomore, and
Yeah.
you see the even on the touchdown that he had, the one-handed grab, it was just so nonchalant. He just looks comfortable out there. So I don't know. There was, you touched on the depth and how impressive that was, but that was probably the most, the biggest thing to me that I thought was huge. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, you covered a lot. I thought one thing that was really interesting was just how Giddens really was just so dominant. And then I think it was like, if I'm not mistaken, because I was like, I don't know, we were still kind of somewhat celebrating in the second half. So I missed like the beginning of the fourth. But I remember I think it was towards the end of the third, like Giddens, like he was already like falling towards the ground, and Shiloh just like hit him in the top of the head, like just cracked him. And I'd be, I think they just called a timeout or something. But either way, after that play, I didn't remember Giddens stepping up as much as he had. And granted, I
Well,
only watched, the beginning,
he didn't get as much work. There were drives where whether it was the workload because he was nearing 30 carries. He was an absolute workhorse for K-State. They put in Dylan Edwards on third or on first and second down and would run him between the tackles like we used to be so frustrated about with Colorado last year. And that ended up, you know, enabling us to the Buffs to get some stops. And when Giddens had a point where he went down or he wasn't, as involved in the offense, that's when the defense looked for Colorado looked so much better and so much more cohesive because Giddens was just bullying fools. He was just it was to a point where he was averaging, I think, 10 yards a carry almost at the start of the fourth quarter. And that just and it wasn't like he had one big run and then a bunch of little ones. It was first down chunk after first down chunk.
yeah. And
And
he finished the game averaging 7.3 yards per carry.
yeah, and I guess the point I'm trying to get across from this was that Colorado made a lot of mistakes in this game. Shedeur Sanders was not on his A game. There were a lot of bad sacks he took. There were a lot of times where he would have that tendency where, NFL scouts are going to pick up on it. And if there's talk of him being, the first quarterback taken in the draft, something he's going to have to work on is holding on to the ball too long because there were times where he would do that. And then at the last possible moment, instead of taking the sack, he just would flip up something crazy. And there were probably 3 or 4 times where intentional grounding was either called or almost called on him.
Mhm.
And that's a killer because, it's the equivalent of a sack, but can put you in a worse spot because of the yardage and everything. And in different situations can put your team in real jeopardy. So I think for Shador, it wasn't his finest work, but he had great plays when when he was tasked to. Like the touchdown to Will Shepherd, I saw an angle where he had to kind of like curve it around the linebacker, the Mike linebacker in the middle, and Shepherd looked completely open. It didn't look like some amazing throw, but thankfully the pocket opened up for him. He was able to step up and just kind of careen it around the guy trying to bat it down. So that was on a big play. It was a drive where they had those injuries where the momentum started to feel like it would get killed over and over, but the Buffs would continue to push the ball down the field.
I think that drive, I was really happy that Shepard was the one that scored that because I think yeah, he had the drop.
Yeah, a couple plays earlier.
But
Another bad drop, and I mean he had the one against Baylor too.
yeah, no, exactly. And that's why this one felt, it was like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
he got immediate redemption for that.
Yeah. So I was glad that happened. But I don't know. One thing that was, that I almost like completely forgot about in my like thinking about the game. And I kept thinking, this play happened at the beginning of the fourth, right? When I said earlier, like when I wasn't watching. So I was like, maybe, just for me, I don't really remember it. But then you didn't mention it either. But like that Shador interception, that did like, I don't know. I had to watch it back, of course, but that did not look like, I don't know. That did not look just
In his defense, on that play, he was hit low, so he couldn't step into his throw.
okay.
So
That
he
makes
kind of just had to airmail it, and it just went wacky. As soon as I saw that happen, I'm like, there's no way he had a normal throwing motion, and that's where the ball went.
Yeah, because
And
I only found like the broadcast clip of it, and so of course the camera's shifting like as he's throwing the ball. So I guess I didn't necessarily see that.
yeah, because I guess it was Wester who was on like who
Yeah,
was on
I think it was a
cross.
slant. Yeah, either a slant or a crosser.
And he was open. That was the right read. Um, but I think when like a guy dove at his like just kind of either fell down or was kind of diving at his ankle area, and he just kind of had to throw it rigidly without stepping into the throw. So that's why that happened.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So I was just like, I don't know. It's
But
we didn't see a
still,
lot of
not his greatest game.
yeah. Because
But
I don't know. At this point, I've just been last year we didn't see a lot of Shador interceptions, and this year,
like up to what, 6, 5?
I don't know. I'd have to look back, but
More than last year already. I know that.
yeah. And now and like I don't know. Now he has like I don't know. You think of the Nebraska intercept, like the pick six, and you think of the first drive against UCF, even though it was a great game. It's just these, some of these play, like at least, the one against NDSU, you're like, okay, that could happen to anybody. You hit the dude's calf and then bounce up in the air for the linebacker. Like that's whatever. But Nebraska, UCF, and then this one's a little bit, more justifiable than the other two. But just, I just wonder what that is necessarily. I wonder, what the change, what the change is, because I will say, like, at least, last year he would just take sacks to your, holding the ball point. So maybe it's leading to more interceptions because he's trying to tie. Like, I don't know. There's just, we don't know necessarily, what's going on in their head. So
Well,
I think,
yeah, no, and I know we're a little bit critical of Shador right now, but even in these kind of games where he makes these mistakes, he still set the record for consecutive pass consecutive completions in a row, like consecutive completions with 16, I think,
yeah.
which I guess shows the bar where it's at, or the standard of our expectations of who is the player who is inarguably the most talented Colorado quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
Um,
Like you look at it as like, the 34 of 40 completion, percentage, and it's like, or fraction, whatever. And it's, I think that's his best completion percentage like the whole season, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
I will
So
say that that is also, you have to take that with a grain of salt too, because of
with
the
the
sacks
yeah, the
and
sacks and the intentional groundings.
the lack of throwing the ball away. Um,
So I don't know. Really, yeah, this game was just kind of funky all around.
yeah,
But I guess it's
it
what
was
we
a
kind
little
of
funky,
expected
but I
for a
think
talented.
it still showed the resilience, because it wasn't like one of those close games last year where they would look terrible for 3.5 quarters and then throw something together at the end to make it close and still have a chance. But the other team was, you know, obviously the superior side. Like USC, like Utah comes to mind, Oregon State, UCLA, all those games ended up, I think, within a possession or so, but never really felt like the Buffs had an actual chance of winning, except maybe against USC if they managed the clock a little better. Um, so for me, it's like we're on par with these teams. This was just the game that went their way. We dealt with a lot of injuries. Mid-game had to make a lot of adjustments, including having Preston Hodge on the outside, which he's out of his element in, I mentioned on our radio broadcast. Um, and that resulted in the go-ahead touchdown for K-State. So it shows the depth of the team and the talent of our team that can be more on par with the Big 12, you know, the upper echelon of our conference. But now, as if you unless you had anything to add, looking forward to Arizona State, it heightens the importance of it tenfold.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. The only thing I was just thinking about is just the performance of Avery Johnson. I know that doesn't necessarily, concern the Buffs, but I just thought it was his injury happened. I forget exactly when his injury happened in the second half, but pretty soon on after I turned on TV, if I remember correctly.
I think it was the opening drive of the second half.
Yeah, and that looked pretty bad. And so
It was
immediately,
it
oh my, yeah, it was weird, especially when
was
they kept showing the replays of it. I was like, that just didn't look right. And all of a sudden,
like
this dude's like, he ran to the locker room. I'm like, okay, he ran to the locker room. That's interesting. And then he's back on, back on the field and play the rest of the game and played, a solid game. So I was just wondering if, for I hate that all my questions are like, oh yeah, I didn't watch the game. What did you think? But
It was the same
first
with
half,
Baylor, though we had Scott to help us out that week, but
yeah, that is true. But what did you have? What did you notice between how his play differed, before and after the injury? And um, I don't know. What do you think this game looks like? I guess I don't know. That the Avery Johnson question kind of sucks. But what do you think this game looks like? I think at full strength, if both teams are not dealing with the injuries and just the, every game's gonna have injuries, but I felt like this one was just pure, just the sheer amount was just
Mhm.
absurd. And so, if you cut down the injuries, especially the star players as well, what do you think this looks like? Because K-State was also missing quite a few guys heading like coming into this game, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. I think they were mostly on defense. They were dealing with some injuries, and I think at full strength, it's still a really close game, but I think Colorado has the edge because they have the best player in the country. And with Hunter, him going down didn't hurt the offense all that much because it didn't take long. They were able to find guys that stepped up. Marion Miller had arguably his second best game of his college career. I mean, I don't know. That's probably inarguably considering. I don't know. There were a lot of games where he just didn't do a whole lot. And finally, when he got the opportunity, um, he made the most of it, which makes his injury suck even more so, which means he's out for the year now. So, it wasn't really the offense where Hunter was missed, but it was the defense because he was a playmaker. And while Colton Hood, who was his substitute, ended up making that massive interception with Hunter, play by play was it takes out an entire element of Colorado's offense because or defense because when Travis is on the field, they usually don't even look to that side of it. And so I will say with Avery Johnson's injury, I don't think that made a huge difference in the flow of the game, just because they were running the ball a crap ton anyway, and when he came back in, they just kept running it a crap ton. They really tested Robert Livingston's rush defense, which didn't perform well by any means. Probably the worst performance, which is a little disheartening after what we saw with UCF when they were the number one rushing offense in the country, and that the Buffs were able to contain that. Um, this time with Giddens, it seemed like there was a hole almost every play in the first half. So, Giddens was an amazing running back. He had a lot of patience. I say was like he used to be. He is an amazing running back, and he played well against Colorado, as he usually has this season. So, all credit to him. But I say at full strength, this is a Colorado win, just because of the sheer impact that as you've said before, both sides of the ball, he's one of one. He's a unique player. Maybe he's not the best corner. Maybe he's not the best wide receiver, pure wide receiver, but he's arguably top three in both. So having that type of player, it's like you lose two. I forget who said. I think it was LeJohntay that said it in the post game presser. Or not LeJohntay. I don't know. Someone said it recently. One of the players. It's like, it is like you're losing two guys. And while he'll be fine, he'll be back for Arizona. It's gonna be tricky for him to come back from that injury and then face a guy like McMillan who kind of torched him last year.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't know, he's been talking about, his excitement for the matchup and stuff like that. And it'll be interesting to see I'm assuming Travis comes out with the big brace he had on, sitting on the sideline, even though he didn't play. But, we'll see. I have to see, I guess, how much that's an impact. So I feel like that's a pretty decent segue into this week where the Buffs head to Tucson to play Arizona and the Wildcats.
Yeah, no, I my first impressions of this game kind of lie in the fact that Arizona is worse than last year. I mean, they lost their coach. They lost the running back who put up 180 yards on Colorado in last season's game, a game in which they only won by a field goal. And that was a game that was sort of like Kansas State, where we looked on par. We looked very close in terms of the talent level, the game planning, with Colorado against Arizona. So for them, I think they're in a period of regression. They lost the coach that brought them their best season in 25 years and got Brent Brennan from San Jose State, who's, first time coaching Power Five football is always going to be difficult. But the one thing I do want to note is the key to this game is how Noah Fafita plays. It's because he was electric last season, one of the most underrated quarterbacks in college football. Obviously, having McMillan as a weapon always helps you out. And to start the season, they looked really good. McMillan put up, I think, 300 yards and 4 touchdowns against poor New Mexico. Well, yeah, no, McMillan, he obviously got early shots for the Heisman, and now is kind of that quickly faded back just because Arizona is struggling right now. They've lost 3 of their last 4. I think they played 4 conference games, but only 3 of them have counted towards their conference record, which is a little strange. But maybe if they play Arizona State, that doesn't count. I, I don't know. But last game against BYU, they really just didn't look good at all. And while BYU surging, um, Arizona has shown themselves to be a very flawed team. They've had a inconsistent defense, though we'll take their performance against BYU with a grain of salt because they were missing their leading tackler for about 3/4 of it. Um, shoot, I'm forgetting his name. I wrote about him. Their linebacker. Um, but I'll get back to it. But for Fafita, he's already, I think, almost he has 9 interceptions, which is the most of any one quarterback in the conference. He's the, they've had just a mistake riddled season. They're bottom half in penalties, they're bottom half in turnovers as a team. They're a team that Colorado could really take advantage of just in how CU has used turnovers, kind of just a springboard into, and spark a really nice performance such as against UCF and roaring back and getting that interception against Kansas State. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I imagine McMillan gets doubled, if not tripled, with how with where Arizona's weapons lie, even though they still have Montana Lamonius Craig, a solid number 2 threat, former Buffalo. So I think that'll be something to watch. I imagine they put Hunter on him for a little, and then they maybe mix things up with McKinney and bracketing him with Selman Craig or something like that. Um, so I'm looking to see how that plays out, but I think Fafita will have to look to other options, and if those other options can perform, then the Wildcats definitely have a chance because they have talent. It's not like they don't have talent. They were able to keep a lot of their core pieces from last season. But for me, it's on Colorado to have a bounce back defensive performance against a team that's kind of structurally similar to them without any crazy run game. They have a decent run game. They're about middle of the pack in a lot of things. Um, I guess I'm kind of rambling about all the research I did on the team,
Oh
but
no, you're good. Like I'll be
I
able to
think
take my
there's
time and
I need to leave something for you. I don't know.
no, you're good. A lot of the things like I don't know you brought up or kind of stuff that a lot of people have noticed so far. Like I was thinking, just looking at the Fafita's interceptions, he's thrown one at least every single game. So
Yeah.
that's huge for Colorado. I feel like turnovers have been, I mean, last year they were obviously huge, but this year, I mean, turnovers, they're never not a big aspect in a football game. And so the fact that uh Fafita has thrown an interception every game. He threw three last week against BYU, two the week before that. I think that's I don't know, that bodes well for Colorado. Especially when the past 2 weeks he's thrown the ball 52 times against BYU and then 49 times against Texas Tech. I think if he's throwing the ball as often as he is and um I mean Arizona still ran the ball a decent amount. I think uh they ran it like 30 times like each last two games, something like that. But if they're throwing the ball as much as they are, it'll be interesting to see how how Travis is of course. But I don't know. We've seen some solid plays from the Colorado defense this year. They've played really well, and so I think it'll be this could be another big game. I feel like for the Buffs. I don't think this game um is one to worry about too much. Like as you mentioned, of course, Fafita and McMillan especially, they have the star power and they've showed that they can run it up as we mentioned earlier with the 61 points. But I think this will be this game kind of that really favors Colorado just in the defensive aspect where Fafita lies and just I don't know. Colorado, of course, last game didn't do well against the run. The run, no matter what, I feel like will kind of always be the biggest heart for them, no matter how much they prove themselves against the run game or don't prove themselves, I guess. Um, but I think it just, matchup wise, it really just bodes well for them, or for the Buffs. And then kind of, I don't know, beyond that, I mean, Arizona has also three losses in the last four games. Uh, so, 1-3 to start Big 12 play. Uh, two, and they're not. I don't know how to necessarily like take in their record, their schedule, just because of the variety of scores they've had. A close, Texas Tech was their closest game, which was a 6 point game. But like New Mexico, even though that was 61-39 in favor of Arizona, I remember watching and that one being pretty exciting. Of course, I mean there was a lot of scoring, but still there was a competitive aspect. And so I don't know. I feel like this game will be favors the Buffs. I feel like the Buffs should win, and I feel like they have the capabilities to win pretty handily. But I feel like to some extent this Arizona team just I don't know. I feel like they I don't know. They have a little bit more star power than some other teams, but not necessarily at the running back position or with a mobile QB as we've seen with some other teams, I guess. So it'll be, you know, interesting. That's the word
Yeah.
I've always loved to use is interesting. So
Well, I guess one last thing I'll add just about, how how Colorado could game plan for Arizona State is that it could, or Arizona, that it could be difficult. I mean, just because there's a lot of middling factors to it. There's no one area where they really stand out besides McMillan, and it's like, oh, double McMillan, and then it's like, oh, but what do we do with the rest? What can this running back do that can maybe take us off guard? How good is their offensive line? They're middle of the pack in sacks. They're middle of the pack. Their sacks allowed. Um, they're just I hate to say it, but kind of mid. They're just in general. I mean, that's not saying that you don't have great elements to their team that could really put Colorado at risk, and especially it being on the road, makes it that much more difficult. Always difficult to win on the road in college football, but we've seen Colorado going to freaking Florida in a hurricane and come out victorious pretty soundly. So it's it may be a difficult game to game plan for, but if there's something cooked up, I'm obviously not one of the coaches. There's definitely tendencies that I can't pick up on, um, whether it be on film or just on the numbers I've looked at, where Colorado could pounce on. But yeah, overall, I think that should do what I
Yeah.
have.
The only
Uh,
thing that I've really like, I don't know, that I was just looking at is back at like the run game is uh a lot of their stats are skewed towards their rushing stats at least are skewed towards the beginning of the year where they only ran the ball 26 times against New Mexico and then 29 times against Northern Arizona, but they averaged 7.9 yards per carry and 6.5 yards per carry. So in those two games, like they didn't run the ball a lot, but when they did, they got huge gains. And so when you look after their non-conference schedule and just looks purely in Big 12, um, I can't, I unfortunately don't have the calculator in my brain, but I mean the stats go 2.9 yards per carry. Then 5.4, that's their top, but then 4 and then 3.6. And so I think if I had to guess, the ball will be in the air a lot more than the Buffs have seen. So I think that will be, you know, at least as far as how will Arizona attack the offensive uh side of things, I think the ball will be in there a lot. I guess if that was, one question we can try and wrap up by hopefully, but as we've, kept arriving time and time again, just don't necessarily know with some of these players on this Arizona team. But
yeah, no, I think that's a good little stopping point if you wanted to have a score prediction. I have a pretty solid one ingrained in my brain right now.
I mean, I feel like the Buffs have been living in the 30s range the whole year really. So I guess I'll say they exceed that. Maybe drop a little say 44 to 31. Actually, no. Yeah, no. I like that. 44 to 31. That may even be a scoregami.
Yeah, no, I mean I like that. I don't know if we'll score that much just because I was forgetting their defensive player. I remembered now, Jacob Manu, who was really solid last year against the Buffs. Though right now they're another team with a lot of injuries in the defense, especially the secondary. So I expect the passing game to feast, but also, we saw they're really trying to get back to running the ball. So if Michael Welch could be added back to the fold, as I asked Deion Sanders the other day, they mentioned Auguste would be getting the start, which I think was a great decision. Um, Hayden is really talented, but he has some flaws that, you know, with our O line and our run blocking schemes at least, aren't really going to hide those flaws too much. So, he's young. He's young. He's an underclassman. So there's still going to be a lot of coming along for him. Auguste, I saw with a lot of explosiveness, a lot of power. So I expect them to, maybe add some more um, blocking and some set. Forget how to pronounce his first name, but Smalls, the tight end.
Oh yeah, Savell.
Adding Yesavell. I expect him to get a lot of snaps and just to block because I think he's done a solid job at it so far. Um, so overall, I think Buffs win this game and maybe I think there's going to be a period where it's close, but they pull away at the end and win about hmm, 34 to 24.
Yeah. No, I think that may be a little bit more realistic just because, you know, every time I'm sure you're doing the same, but when you're speaking, I'm looking more into stats just to see if there's anything else extra that I notice. And I mean, Arizona is only the most passing yards they've given up this year is 280 to Utah. Um, and so not necessarily but they've given up 1 million yards on the ground. Not a horrible amount, but 2 games over giving up over 200 yards, one of which to Giddens in Kansas State. Um, but it will be, I don't know, that I think that definitely puts my score prediction in a lot more of an unlikely realm, just because maybe the Buffs do struggle a little bit more throwing the ball against this team who hasn't really been thrown on too much this year. They've only faced over 30 passes three times this season. Um, so yeah, I think, yeah, there's just a lot of folds, and I think that point that you made of Arizona being kind of mid is or not even kind of just mid is a fun one to, it makes this game a fun one, and yeah, I guess we'll see come Saturday. So, I mean, I'll be at the, basketball scrim or exhibition versus Pomona Pitzer, but you
Yeah,
know,
I'll be at baseball for some of it.
I guess that's true. I'll be there. I'll be helping with baseball in the morning, and then I'll
We'll
wear.
we'll have Brittany, Roberto, or yeah, Brittany, Roberto, and Zach there.
There we go. Oh, Mike's falling, but
Oh,
but anyway, I feel like that's a good wrap up for football. Uh,
yeah,
so I
and
know we could also need to wrap this up because you got class soon.
I do.
Uh,
I literally just got the reminder on my phone.
but I don't know, not too much going on necessarily in the other. I mean, I guess, excuse me, volleyball is actually in one of their better.
Well, they've been having a solid stretch.
Yeah, they're coming off a win against Arizona, their third straight win of Big 12 play.
All in 5 sets. They've been outlasting teams pretty well. And getting this last one on the road was pretty important.
Yeah, and UCF was on the road as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. Good call.
So yeah, now they tomorrow uh today's Thursday, October 17th. Tomorrow they head to Arizona State to play the number 13 ranked Sun Devils on the road. So that will
They
be
upset them last year.
yeah, so that could be maybe a late turning point. Actually not even late. They play a lot more games. Or not a horrible amount, but a decent amount more games. Still, but maybe a turning point for this, team that has kind of struggled so far. I don't know if you have any extra things to add about volleyball before we head on to soccer.
No, I mean they simply put they've been turning maybe starting to turn a little corner. So it's great to see.
Definitely. And then yeah, and then of course, soccer when we talked was coming off the 6-1 loss to TCU. My mic was almost
We
falling
have to
again.
mention
Jesus.
the best female athlete on the CU campus right now before this podcast is over.
Yeah, no, Jordan Knightus, another bounce back from that game and came up with her fourth Big 12 goalkeeper of the week. So
Mm.
a solid showing for her. She only gave up one goal um this last week. Because
Against
the
Tech.
Buff, yeah, Texas Tech. As they play, the Buffs had two draws, 1-1 and 0-0 against number 24 Texas Tech, which is a one thing that I think we brought up in the last pod. So we weren't sure if they're gonna play or maybe we said it last pod, but we weren't sure if they're gonna play if TCU was gonna be the last ranked game that the Buffs were gonna see. Um and at that point only 5 games left of the season. So the fact that they were able to draw against number 24 ranked team uh bodes well, I guess.
Yeah,
Not that, rankings matter too much, but
Ava Priest's goal was an absolute banger.
that was something solid. I couldn't I don't know. She was like already on the ground while, before the ball was
That
hit the net.
that would have registered if you were anchoring for the live show. We had it win play of the week. It would have registered a man wow
Oh,
from
definitely. That would have gotten a woman wow, maybe. I don't know.
no true.
But no, but anyway, soccer team, I mean, soccer is just it's 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 a tough game. I think you know, the tying aspect, I hate it, obviously. I don't think anybody likes ties. But the fact that they're able to, still get a point and goes into standings and in a positive way, is helpful, and hopefully the Buffs can I don't know, find their way back into the win column because that's now 3 straight games without a win. So
Right.
they head to Cincinnati. Uh well, they're already in Cincinnati, I hope, because they play Cincinnati in less than 2 hours as of this recording. And then on my birthday actually this Sunday. They head to West Virginia to play the Mountaineers. So
Hmm.
then yeah, and then by that point, by the time we talk to you next, I'll be 21 years old and we'll be talking about Utah. So good stuff.
Awesome. And then
So
next week we'll have tons of basketball on the agenda, simply because you'll be in Kansas City most likely when we record it for Big 12 Media Day.
yeah, probably because yeah, no, it'll be one of a few SBS trips to Kansas City this year. The first, I guess, of a few, just because we have the
We have football and then
Big 12 championship and for basketball, and then yeah, football as you mentioned for when they play Kansas, Buffs play Kansas, so that'll be fun. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, basketball has Pomona, men's basketball has Pomona Pitzer, and their individual media day, the Winter Sports Media Day on Monday. So yeah, a lot of basketball content. And Harrison will be bringing it as well.
I'll
Uh,
be around.
but
I gotta get I'm working on a profile right now. I gotta get that done.
yeah,
But
no,
before,
me too, actually. Mine's not a profile, more of a feature, but either way, gotta get some stuff done, gotta lock in. And I gotta drop more of In the Heyday. It's been a minute.
I know it's only
I've
been
just
what, 2 episodes.
Yeah, I dropped 2 episodes and so I need to work on episode 3. It's just been I don't know, it's been tough, but that's the nature of it, I guess. So so yeah, I don't think, we have anything else in that case. Of course, like you said, we have
It didn't look like I was paying attention actually. I had some homework for Marina's class in 10 minutes I forgot about. So just cranked out a great public speaking example about a speech that I haven't even seen before. So
well, see, exactly. That's diligent work.
actually I have. It's that Tom Brady speech where he was like, "Don't quit. I don't care if you're a 6th round pick."
Um, but yeah, no, good stuff. Because yeah, you said you have that class in 10 minutes. This is a good wrapping up.
But yeah, no, we made good time today.
Yeah, we did. This will be as I say this, I hope I'm not wildly wrong, but hopefully an efficient episode for the listeners. Honestly, more of a lighthearted one than usual.
Yeah. Even though we lost, the Colorado Buffaloes lost in
Yeah.
football.
Yeah, no, it's all right. And as you hear the Zoom kid, this this kid on a Lime scooter, bro.
Oh, I was about to say,
Yeah, yeah, not a
oh,
Zoom,
Twitter, isn't
dude. Every
it?
day. Maybe we should have him as a guest. That'd be something special. But I don't know. This is we've drawn this episode on long enough. So as always,
Got you one.
my name is Alt Reyes,
I'm Harrison Simeon.
and you heard it first. Oh my God. Okay.
Peace.